Welcome to the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge, your go-to show for outdoor traditions and adventures in Vermont and New Hampshire. I'm your host, Joshua Smith, and today we're taking you to Bath, New Hampshire for a visit with Tammy and Paul Collins, the heart and soul behind the Collins family farm. We'll talk all about spring on the farm, from prepping to soil to early planting to navigating New England's mud season and keeping a multi-generational family farm growing strong. Whether you're a backyard gardener, a first-time homesteader, or someone who just loves hearing from your neighbors who work the land, this episode is for you. Plus, Gary Moore shares his thoughts on the outdoors with a reflection on spring trout fishing, and Mark Breen from the Fairbanks Museum gives us the Outdoor Edge weekend forecast, so you know what just to expect before heading outdoors. So go ahead, grab a cup of coffee, pull on your boots, and stay with us. We're heading out into the fields with the folks who live it every day. All right, as promised, we are talking with Tammy and Paul Collins of the Collins family farm. Tammy, Paul, how are you doing?
Good.
Wonderful today.
Yeah? And so you guys have been around. So this is exciting because you have experience farming in Vermont and also experience farming in New Hampshire.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the soil like in the different states?
Oh, well, it's over here in the Connecticut River Valley. It's a lot deeper,
Yeah.
Topsoil, not as gravelly, stony as it was back in the Vermont.
Right.
And we had clay issues in Vermont, where we were. So it's a more fertile area here.
Okay. And you guys at the Collins farm, you guys, that started in 1997?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
In Bath.
In Bath, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. As a farms are working every year round. There's always something happening, but it seems as though that there is more that happens in the springtime is when things really start to pick up after the winter hibernation.
Yeah.
That's correct. We're all ready to see something growing after these long winters.
Right. And so the point of actually talking to the two of you here in our May show is this is where we start seeing the farms, as we say, start to come back to life. You had sugaring season's over. You got crops you're starting to plant. You start to smell that beautiful aroma of spring, which is the manure spreaders. And this is where really everything starts to pick up for a lot of farmers. So what I'd like to ask you first, too, is what crops do you usually start planting first thing in the spring?
Well, on March 1st, we open up our greenhouses and we start our farm stand tomatoes and peppers. And they need that jump start to have a harvest. And then in the ground, sometime in the middle of April, we start planting the cold hardy crops. Like Paul's out there planting our onions and spinach, peas, carrots, parsnips, beets, all those cold hardy things, as soon as we can get them in.
Okay. And do you recommend starting seeds indoors, or do you wait to direct sow in the garden?
Well, you definitely want to get those warm season plants started in the greenhouse, which is why we do that.
Okay.
Other ones that you want to direct sow, you have to wait till after the last frost.
Okay.
Like beans and cukes and squashes.
Right. Okay. What's one cold hardy crop you think more people should try growing then?
Well, I think kale is a win-win because it's cold hardy in the beginning and you can't kill it even when it snows on it.
And so how do you prepare your soil after a long New Hampshire winter then?
Well, the soil preparation actually starts in the fall. We'll put manure down on our ground, and then we'll put in a cover crop and winter rye. And then in the spring, we'll till in the winter rye for, organic matter, and it will give you some level of nitrogen.
And do you have any favorite tips for improving the soil health, naturally speaking?
Well, going back to cover crops, it's excellent for adding organic matter, and again, the small amount of nitrogen that'll put in there. And the smaller gardeners, they can broadcast in the fall, rake it in, and then, and of course, there's cover crop options, other than winter rye. You can use hairy vetch and clovers, and there's a wide variety of things you could use. But it helps, keep the soil from eroding and keeps things growing all winter long, really.
Right. What should beginner gardeners know about, would you say, timing their spring planting?
Soil temperature should be 50 degrees or above.
Okay.
And they need to learn their planting zone. And a note here, we used to be zone 4 in this area. Now we've upgraded to zone 5A.
Okay.
With the climate changes. So watch your nighttime temps after you plant, because it's New England and it can change quickly. So you want to cover those transplants.
Okay.
Or those seedlings that are really cold sensitive, like your tomatoes and your peppers, melons, beans, etc.
Right.
Seeds in the ground, of course, are safe.
Okay. And you just mentioned like zone areas, because folks that might go to a garden store might see like those little lines there. It says there's zone A, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. And explain a little bit about what those zones mean for somebody that's just learning.
If you want to have success in our area, you have to choose zone 4 or 5.
Okay.
If you choose zone 6, that's a warmer climate, and they're not going to make it in this cold nighttime climate.
All right. So that's why you don't see any mango trees around here.
Or lemon.
Yeah. Oh, that's what
Outdoor lemon trees don't work.
Okay. All right. That's true. Yeah. Can you share any techniques for managing, say, spring pests without any harsh chemicals?
Well, there's, we use black plastic mulch, to suppress weeds.
Mm-hmm.
We plant into that. You can use, grass clippings when you mow your lawn to put down. I've used rhubarb leaves.
Huh.
And you can use, cardboard that's not waxed, anything to suppress the weeds from coming up. The other thing is, there's plants that you can put in, like marigolds and nasturtiums, for deter the insects. And those are some things you can do to help with a pest.
And what vegetables or herbs grow best in our part of the Upper Valley then?
Actually, a lot of plants grow well.
Okay.
It's just a matter of educating yourself on your zones. Again, you don't want to buy zone 7 plants from the local box store, because they're doomed to fail. So you could start with your greens and broccolis, cabbages, beans, lettuce, summer squash, and zucchini. One seed of zucchini will fill the neighborhood. So, it's just educating yourself.
Right.
And it's exciting. Basil, dill, parsley, they all do very well here. And the list goes on and on.
Right. Now, are raised beds better than in-ground gardens for beginners?
Honestly, that's a preference for the gardener.
Okay.
But a raised bed is a small space, and you can really maximize that space and focus on that, and you can feel success rather than take on too big of a space.
Okay.
And you can also work in like compost. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. What's your favorite, say, for beginning gardeners? What's your favorite easy win plant for new gardeners to try this spring?
Definitely green beans.
Okay.
And zucchini. Yellow summer squash is easy. There's not much insect pressure, and it grows quickly.
Okay. What does a typical spring day look like at the Collins family farm?
Well, we have 2 greenhouses on our farm that we sell retail plants for. And after that March 1st initial planting of our tomatoes and peppers, we're busy filling it with flowers for retail.
Okay.
And like pansies and fuchsias are right off the bat to get them ready for spring sales, and geraniums and begonias. We're busy watering and transplanting all our seed starts. It's an exciting time, and we can be warm in there when it's like 20 degrees outside. We're really coasty.
In the vegetable fields, we're out preparing the soil, plowing, rototilling, and putting in the cold hardy crops, like the carrots and onions and parsnips, things like that.
In the 40s in the springtime, that's t-shirt weather here.
Yeah.
But 40s like anywhere else, that's you're still wearing a winter jacket. But so from a farmer's perspective, what are some signs that you look for that tell you that spring truly is here?
I think it's in nature.
Yeah.
I look forward to those red wings. That tells me it's March. And then the robins and the peepers. I'm probably the first person out there with a flashlight listening to those. Pussy willows and then crocuses,
right.
Green grass.
And do you still get excited for the first planting day each year?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've been poring over seed catalogs all winter long and getting our supplies ready so that when we're planting, we're in our moment.
Right.
One year in February, Paul came up to the house. It was a warm season, and he said, "The greenhouse floor is not frozen. What can I plant?" And he planted spinach and carrots, and we harvested it almost immediately.
Yeah.
And I know too, in this neck of the woods, we always have to deal with mud season, and so how does the Collins family farm manage the mud season and any of the other predictable weather on a farm?
Well, mud season's, rather short, and if it's too wet, we don't go out and work the soil. And over time, short time, and really we go out and we can start working fields and plow up a section of dirt and rototill in our cover crops.
Right.
And so mud season is not too much to deal with.
Do you have any family traditions that started in the spring season?
We do. We have an annual work day in the greenhouse that involves our whole family. My sister comes up from North Carolina. Other family members travel hours, and we really get a lot done in the greenhouse. It's like a family reunion, and then we just have a really good time doing it, too, and it's a big help to us.
Right. Excellent. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to continue our conversation with Tammy and Paul Collins. We're going to be talking, they'll be giving us some advice for beginner gardeners and some hobby farmers. So stay tuned for that.
It's a St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
At R&L Archery, we know it's not just about the thrill of the hunt or the size of the fish. It's about the moments that matter most, the traditions passed down from one generation to the next, and the stories told by the fire long after the sun is set. It's about the journey, the memories, and the time spent together with friends and family, because these are the moments that truly last a lifetime. R&L Archery, where every adventure begins. Come create your story.
The Autosaver Group's St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram asks, do your outdoor adventures take you to where you wish you had a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive? At St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram, explore their vast inventory of adventure-savvy four-wheel drives and all-wheel drive vehicles, ready for you to drive at home. Plus, every St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram deal includes the Big Deal Plus, which is a 2-year unlimited scheduled maintenance plan, which includes free state inspections for life. Stop in today in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, or shop St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram online at stjohnsburycdjr.com.
The Fairley Community Church, located in Fairley, will be holding their Spring Fling White Elephant fundraiser on May 15th and 16th from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. and again on May 17th from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. For more information, please call 802-274-4302 or 336-264-0451.
Lisbon's Shared Ministry is hosting a community lunch at 49 South Main Street on Friday, May 16th from 11:30 a.m. to 1:15 p.m. Payment is by donation.
What's going on? The community calendar of events in the listening area is brought to you by Wells River Savings, your good neighbor bank.
Haverhill Parks and Recreation welcomes you to Railroad Park on May 17th for our first concert of the summer season. We're thrilled to welcome the Parker Hill Road Band back to the pavilion from 5 to 7 p.m. Mark your calendars for this show, as you won't want to miss the Parker Hill Road Boys on May 17th from 5 to 7 p.m.
Welcome back to the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge. And we are talking with Tammy and Paul Collins of the Collins Family Farm. And we're talking all things spring. We're talking all things farming. We're talking all things gardening. And before the break, we were talking a little bit about some spring planting and gardening tips, and we were also talking about some life on the farm in the spring. And now we're going to kind of jump into advice for beginner gardeners and hobby farmers. So my first question is what's the most common mistake would you say new gardeners make in the spring?
Well, in their excitement, they plant
life on the farm in the spring. And now we're going to kind of jump into advice for beginner gardeners and hobby farmers. So my first question is what's the most common mistake would you say new gardeners make in the spring?
Well, in their excitement, they plant too early, their warm season crops, and of course our cold nights could wipe them out, and they don't know to cover them. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake that they make. They also start too big, and they become overwhelmed, and that's a shame. It's better to start with small space, and my advice, work up gradually as they learn. And then often new gardeners will plant it and leave it. And expect a harvest, where you really need to nurture your garden by watering and weeding, and then you get your harvest.
Okay.
So, and if you don't weed, the weeds win in the end.
And what tools do you think every beginning gardener should invest in then?
Well, you can go to supply stores and rent rototillers, and or you can buy a rototiller to work your soil up in the spring. A cultivator hoe. I just have a push cultivator hoe I use quite a lot that actually was Tam's grandfather's. So, those are things you don't cost a whole lot of money to purchase.
Are there any local resources or groups that you recommend for beginner farmers?
Absolutely. Our go-to help is the UNH Extension. And if you're in Vermont, there's UVM. And they have a wealth of information that help even new gardeners. There's an email. It's called answers@unh.ed. It's like an info line that gets you a direct line to the master gardeners and specialists with all your questions. And I'm sure Vermont might have a similar thing, but I highly recommend that.
Are there any, what are some good budget-friendly ways people can improve their garden space, would you say then?
Well, it's called companion planting, where you learn what plants work well together. I'd like to recommend a book here. It's called Carrots Love Tomatoes. I couldn't begin to give you all that information, but they help you with all your new gardening needs. You could grow on a trellis to use your vertical space. Pole beans and cucumbers work well that way. Also, if you have less land, and you could do container gardening. You can grow many things in a container. It's very rewarding. It's a great way to have fresh vegetables on a deck or a porch.
And you mentioned too about those containers. I know a couple years ago we had tomatoes in a bucket, and we planted tomatoes.
Sure.
Would you recommend? Can you do, as you mentioned, zucchini and yellow squash? Can you do that out of a bucket, or does that need more space?
You can do it. I would recommend one per bucket, and a good size bucket.
Okay. All right.
Fertilize as you go too.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because as that plant grows, it has more fertilizer needs.
Right. And they'll be able to get most of those fertilizers if it was actually in the ground itself instead of in a bucket then.
Right.
Okay. All right. Hey, I'm learning things too. This is exciting. Yeah. So what would be your advice for someone planting their very first vegetable garden?
Again, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Focus on a few things for your own success, and then grow slow.
So is it worth building a compost pile or a bin even for small gardens?
Yeah, it is. It's pre-compost. You go get some chicken wire and roll it into a tube, and you got yourself a compost bin. You can take your table scraps and lawn clippings, leaves, etc., and add it, and it makes excellent compost.
Right.
It doesn't cost a whole lot of money.
Right. Kitchen scraps, usually, as you mentioned, you should roll in some leaves in that too.
Right. Yes, you need to mix it.
Right.
And turn it. They usually recommend once a month you should go out and kind of turn it.
Right.
To get a true compost.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And do you recommend growing from seeds, or do you buying starters from a nursery?
I'm actually going to recommend both.
Okay.
learning process, but plants that use seeds, you're going to need to learn what those are. Carrots. At our greenhouse, we've had people ask for carrots in a 6-pack and beets in a 6-pack, peas, and we've had to educate them. You do benefit from buying from a nursery because they're established, and that gives you a head start. Right. Your short growing season plants especially is a huge advantage for new gardeners.
Right. And Collins Family Farm, you guys sell starters as well?
We do. We have 2 greenhouses of retail-ready plants, and vegetable starts is one whole greenhouse.
Right. And the benefit of the Collins Family Farm is no sales tax.
You got it.
Yeah. And I know when it comes to planting is that there's certain seeds that you plant one at a time, and there's others that's called, broadcast seeding. So what would be the difference between doing broadcast seeding and then planting seeds one at a time?
If you could plant all your carrots in one big bunch, you're going to get no carrots. They need thinning because a carrot needs space to grow. Spinach, on the other hand, you can broadcast and have a crop. So again, you do need to do some research on your own to learn these things.
Right, that's true.
And ask seasoned gardeners.
Right. So what are your go-to natural methods for keeping weeds under control? Because you mentioned weeds earlier. You have to be on top of the weeds.
Yeah, weeds are the biggest issue, really. So we use plastic mulch that we will plant our starts into. I do have a rotary hoe, a hand that I walk down through the rows with to knock out the smaller weed seedlings coming in. And we have rototillers behind our tractors, and we even have a weeder that we hitch behind the tractor where we can straddle the row and go down through it. It works great for, beets and beans, and so that's how we keep our weeds under control.
Right.
So, and we do a lot of hand weeding too. We have to get down on our hands and knees and actually pull between some of the plants. So.
Right. And I know growing up having a garden that it's incredibly important for kids to learn how to garden because they know where their food's coming from. It's different than buying a bunch of carrots at the grocery store than it is to actually pull carrots out of the ground.
Right. I would definitely recommend kids in the garden. They can watch a radish grow real quick, and if they've planted the seed, it's very rewarding for kids. There's green beans that just jump right out of the ground, and a cherry tomato that they can eat all summer. Those are all easy things that kids can grow. We made our grandchildren a garden fort.
Oh.
And they had their own cucumbers and tomatoes. They had great pride in that, little benches. You can also do fruit like strawberries and maybe a blueberry bush. That's out there. Sunflower gardens is another one for kids. Also, there's a local contest in Wells River, the Great Zucchini Contest. You could get them to raise their own zucchini and shoot for that. Our grandson does it every year. It's a lot of fun, and they could pick their seeds, and you could make it your own. You could have a family contest.
Right. So what does it mean to you to be part of a multi-generational farm in Bath?
Well, it's rewarding to be working with your family. My dad worked with us for 30 plus years. You both have the same goals. You know what needs to get done, and with the idea is that you can get things accomplished, and and it's also caring for the animals and the land. Pass on to the next generation, and the farm has a huge resource really of food, and for us recreation, and it earns us an income.
Right.
So even my mom would come over and work in the greenhouse.
Yeah.
And then our children are involved. Our grandchildren now are getting more involved. It's nice to show them how to grow things, how to care for things. The other day, we had to plow up some winter rye, so I took our 13-year-old grandson and got the plow hitched up, and it's rewarding to go down and see him smiling, just plowing over the winter rye. So in doing all that, you're hoping that you're passing on the love of the farm and the land.
Right.
You know, and the farm has become, for us, it's become a gathering spot for family events, you know. A place to escape, as it were. My nieces and nephews would come up for the summer, and even on school vacations during the winter, they'd spend the week on the farm. Right. So, you know, it's just satisfying to have all the grandchildren and family right involved in some way. And, you know, the kids can ride with you on the tractor, and you take them out and they're harvesting pumpkins with you. You can see the excitement when they find the biggest pumpkin, you know, and beans, picking flowers. You know, those are all the rewards of being a family farm.
You mentioned your mom was there at some point, and so your grandchild. So that's 4 generations right there.
At one time, we could, you know, we'd had 4 generations be working in the greenhouse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so how has the local community supported your farm over the years?
They've been great. They purchase our plants at the greenhouse and flowers, and then they continue to visit our farm stand and buy our produce. And it's very good positive feedback from our customers. That appreciate a local grown product.
Mm.
And you get to know your customers, your neighbors on a more personal level.
Right. Do you have any springtime stories from the early days of the Collins family farm?
Yes, one time for Mother's Day, I was selling flowers and hanging baskets in the snow. It was snowing. I had to close the greenhouse to keep the furnaces from turning on. That was kind of fun.
We've had flooded vegetable fields, which would bring in a lot of debris, you know, and we'd have to clear off truckload after truckload of debris. One year I planted sweet corn April 15th. It came up, but it didn't, you know.
Right. Some of those springtime stories are like you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Yeah.
Yeah.
How have the local schools or organizations connected with your farm in the spring?
Okay, so we also have the local school come to our greenhouse, and they get their hands dirty, and they learn how to plant seeds and plants, and then they come with a master gardener that's working in the classroom. So we just love that, and then they go home with a plant as a little prize. And of course, they share that with their parents, and it keeps, you know, informed, and they come back. It comes back to us. It feels good to help the community that way. We also donate vegetable plants to local community gardens at our school and other towns. That's a great way to garden too, is in the community garden.
Right.
If you don't have land, you can just find a community garden near you.
So what's it like seeing returning customers year after year once the farm stand opens up again?
It's so rewarding. You know, you like to know your customers, and I certainly do. We value their input, and if they request a certain variety to grow for the farm stand, we try our best to help them. And we share garden stories. They like to tell me how their garden did, and I like to hear it. Right.
So since your inception that you started back in 1997, have you noticed any changes in community's interest in gardening and farming?
Yeah, we've seen surges in new gardeners in like 2009. The economy was on the downside. There was a lot of homesteaders coming in wanting to plant gardens, and they needed knowledge, and they were asking questions. And then in the COVID years was the same thing. We had customers coming in even then asking if we had chickens and pigs or cattle to sell too. You know, so there is an interest in homesteading. You know, in some new gardens they stick with it, and then they try and come back, you know, to the farm stand and say, well, it didn't work out, we'll just buy your produce. So, you know. And dairy farming in New Hampshire and Vermont has significantly declined, you know. However, there are more beef farms now, and now there's other uses for the land, like there's a lot of interest in growing grains, soybeans and corn, things like that.
Right. And so I know before we started talking, we were talking about how the number of dairy farms in Vermont and New Hampshire have decreased significantly. Do you see that based off of just economics, or that no one's buying as much milk lately?
It's mostly economics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. What's one piece of old school wisdom about spring farming you two still live by?
well, the old timers would say don't plant your garden until June 10th because you can still get a frost. And in fact, I think when we were first married, it was June 11th we lost our garden to a hard frost. So the possibility is still there. However, with climate has been warming up, you might get that situation 1 in 10 years now. It's not all the time.
Right. And a garden that big, you can't cover it over.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's your favorite local product or crop from nearby farms? Let me ask that question again. I messed that up.
I think that was one we
Let me
didn't
cross
answer
off.
too.
Oh, you didn't?
Actually,
Yeah.
Cross
we didn't
that
know
off.
how to answer that.
Oh, okay. So how can listeners come visit or support Collins Family Farm this spring?
Well, they could visit our greenhouses. We are open May 1st. We're selling flowers and vegetable starts. We have herbs. We have perennials, lots of hanging baskets, and some nursery stock for everyone. And then in the summer, they could visit our farm stand, and our specialty there would be our sweet corn
Okay.
and our tomatoes. Yeah, that's where we're at in the summer.
And then in the fall, our son Corey, has the corn maze with fall events like pick your own pumpkins, wagon rides, flashlight mazes. And then I think, he's going to try a light maze this year. So there's always something going on, right?
Right.
From March right through to December. Really.
Yes.
And then like the January, February, March, like that's the time where you guys were able to plan for the spring and the summer.
We get all our supplies. We're pouring over seed catalogs. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our downtime.
Was there any seeds that you planted that you said, let's just try it, and been surprised with how well it's done?
I think sweet potatoes falls into that category.
Okay.
You have to start with a slip, but given a good summer, you can harvest a lot of sweet potatoes, and they're fun for kids too to dig up.
Really?
It's a treasure.
Yeah.
I like to grow colored foods,
Okay.
like blue potatoes and burgundy beans. And there's another tip for kids: if they're different, they're
Right.
going to be excited.
Right. So if people want to learn more about the Collins Family Farm, where is the best place they could go to?
Well, they could visit us at on Route 302 in Upper Bath.
Okay.
Facebook, sometimes our son posts things for us.
Right. Yeah, you guys got some really good social media stuff because your son Corey Collins posts a lot of fun stuff.
Can I just say he's a goofball?
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. And once again, we've been talking to Tammy and Paul Collins of the Collins Family Farm. And visit them. Visit their farm stand is open now. So thank you so much, Tammy and Paul. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for the invite.
Yeah, you're welcome. And also coming up, Gary Moore shares his thoughts on the outdoors with a look at one of the spring's quiet joys, trout fishing. From cold streams to patient casts, Gary reflects on what it makes this time of year so perfect for anglers. And he's interviewing a guest that is no stranger to radio, so tune in for that.
It's the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
You said this year you would spend more time outside. You said this year you would get time to enjoy summer. You said this year is the year, just like last year. Don't spend another season scrambling to fill the schedule. Northeast Kingdom Online can help you create a marketing plan that grows your business. A complete plan with a certified marketing manager that will take care of the details so you can focus on bigger things. We offer complete websites, social media, and marketing services to business owners like you. Visit northeastkingdomonline.com today for a free consultation.
Bow season may be over, but you can still tune up your archery skills right here at Running Water Recreation in Bradford. Join our Tuesday night archery tag league. We'll keep that aim sharp and improve your reaction time. You'll even be able to see where you rank internationally. New to archery? No problem. We will get you trained up and ready to compete. The league is open to everyone and all skill levels. So whether you're 12 or 72, suit up and find out just how much fun tag with a bow and arrow can be. Running Water Recreation. Have fun, keep moving, and aim high.
With me today is Peter Shea, well-known fishing author and, if I dare say, very avid fly fisherman. He's fished all over North America, but we're going to concentrate today on Vermont, specifically, I should say primarily, trout ponds or trout streams within this radius of this radio station. So, Peter, welcome to WYKR.
It's wonderful to be here, Gary. Known you for so many years here, and it's nice to have an opportunity to visit.
Right. I invited Peter to talk about his latest book, which came out in March, the new Atlas of Vermont Trout Ponds. But before I get to that, Peter has written a lot of other books about fishing in Vermont, and I'd like to sort of go back towards the beginning to get our listeners up to speed on what you've written about and how and so forth. I first met you probably 35 or 40 years ago.
It was that, yeah.
When I interviewed you about Vermont trout streams, which was published by Northern Cartographics, which I believe you were a partner in at the time.
Yeah, that was my company and another fellow were partners in it, and we ran that for about 13 or 14 years.
Right. So a little about your background. You're a cartographer?
I am. I went to college for sociology, and I was out for a while, and went back to graduate school at UVM for geography, and got really interested in cartography. And so I was a teaching associate in the cartography lab there for a couple of years, and really enjoyed it. I've always been fascinated with maps, and so I've pursued it pretty much since that, and that was like we were talking in the early 80s or so.
Right.
Yeah.
All your books have excellent maps, and of course that's what a cartographer does. You mentioned you originally majored in sociology.
Yeah.
Probably should have been psychology. I mean, avid fishermen like you have an issue, right? You need to talk to a psychologist now and then?
I think we do, because sometimes we just persist when maybe it's better off to take the day off. But fishing is just is something that I can lose myself in. There's only been very few times in my lifetime that I've brought any kind of heartache to my fishing, and there's been some reasons then, but merely 3 or 4 times in a lifetime. So I just love the involvement that it offers.
Well, I know, because I've followed you for a long time, that you're apt to backpack into a remote pond and spend 2 or 3 days there swatting the mosquitoes and black flies just to take a chance on catching a nice brook trout. I think maybe a psychologist should talk to you.
I think you're probably aware of the story I told you about Bourne Pond, and I did need a psychiatrist for that pond, because over a 20-year period, I visited the first 4 times, and that's for me, it was like a 4 or 5 mile hike to where I'd fish, and I'd stay 2 nights, come back, and I made that trip 4 times without catching a single fish, and on the 5th time, I caught a nice 15-inch female brookie, and I was just happy.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, some of our listeners would say that that's real dedication. Others would say you're just a fanatic and question. One of those is one of my brothers who lives to fish. He fishes like 160 days a year. One of his favorite places, of course, is Sion Pond, a place you're very familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
And within a short distance of where we're recording.
It's a wonderful place. I think that what I love about that place is it's not been stocked probably in 30 years or more. And so when you go there and fish, you catch fish from all classes.
Right.
You can catch like a 6-inch fish, and then you can catch a 16-inch fish. Right. It's really remarkable. They're beautifully colored in the fall.
For listeners not familiar with Sion Pond, it's actually Noyce Pond. It's owned by the state of Vermont now. They keep the boats there. You
Right.
pay a fee to go. It's Forest Parks and Recreation. You pay a fee to
Right.
go there, but
Right.
it's always
barbless hooks.
correct.
And
Catch and release,
catch and
barbless
release,
hooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, very scenic, and like I say, the fishing is really wonderful there. It used to be, I don't think they take individual bookings, but for a while, because now they're booking groups there, but there
Right.
was a time where you could go and book a room for a night or two, and I
at
hope they go back to
at
that.
the old inn there. Yeah.
Right, I think when COVID took over, it all went to hell in a handbasket, but
Well, they used to have a young couple that ran it that put on great meals there.
Oh, they did.
My wife and I used to go there to eat.
Oh, if I go back like more than 30 years, close to 40 years perhaps, I remember they had a couple there that the woman was not very nice and would tell us to come in. We had to have the boats in when the sun was down. And of course, that's the exact opposite. What we want is that hour of light that you might get after the sun is down. So most of the time we ignored her.
Just as an aside, for anybody who may be listening who's not familiar, it's actually Noyes Pond, Noyes, and Sion is Noyes spelled backwards.
Right. There's a legend about that, but I think it's completely apocryphal that the governors used to go there and hide away, and that was kind of code for, they reversed the name to say, oh, they're at Sion. But I think that's likely apocryphal. I don't know why they actually twisted the name off around on that.
I don't know, but I do know that state officials have gone there for meetings in the past.
Oh, absolutely.
Back in the early 80s when I was commissioner of Fishing Game, that was a favorite place to have a meeting.
Well, maybe there is something to that legend.
Easy drive from Montpelier, but fairly remote enough so that you could have private conversations and relax a little.
Yeah.
Great place. But anyways,
setting.
Like I say, the first of your books that I got was Vermont Trout Streams, and the maps, all that information in them. I guess every one you've done since is full of a lot of information. One of my favorites is Vermont Trout Hikes. Okay,
I think that's my favorite too.
Regular readers of my newspaper column and listeners to this program know that I rave about remote trout streams. The further I can get from a road, the better I like it, the smaller the stream. When I go fishing, I don't want to see anybody.
I'm the same way.
This is it's a great book. And by the way, I should tell readers that the more recent books all have GPS.
Yes, we've added that since it's become into being, basically, and it makes. I like to have the written maps in some cases too, and there's we have charts, depth charts of the lakes where there are.
Right.
We've done that, but the GPS is really helpful. You can just kind of punch that into your navigation in your car or on your handheld, and pretty much get you there unfailingly.
Yeah, I'm just thumbing through Vermont Trout Hikes right now, and I see Kettle Pond, which again is a pond not very far from here.
Right,
and lot of the readers will know it.
And that is a short walk.
Oh yes,
you can actually carry a canoe into there because it's and you can actually stay. There's a state park associated with it. You can stay or not stay
on the south side. Yeah.
Right, there's two accesses. One, if you're staying at the park overnight, or have a site, and otherwise there's another access for the public if you're not staying there. But that's a wonderful place as well. Beautifully scenic.
Less well known in Groton is Pigeon Pond.
Oh yeah, Pigeon Pond is it's a bit of a hike, but it's not on a road really. It's not a trail, but it's about a mile and a half up a dirt road that lands there. Mm-hmm. And if my memory is serving me, it would be the south or the east side of the pond is developed and it's got camps along the side, but the other side of the pond is all wooded and just natural. Right. It's a really beautiful place to fish. Lots of big rocks on the bottom there for structure and so on. And it's been a while since I've been in there, and that's a beautiful place.
Yeah. One of my favorites is Sterling Pond. Now you can take the chairlift up if you go in the winter, but it's a pretty good hike going up along the long trail.
Well, we would call that Gary short and sweet because you know that trail up there. In fact, I tell people, if you're going to go up there, don't plan on fishing till dark,
right,
and then walking out. There's you can stay. The Green Mountain Club's got a little cabin there, so stay, because the trail is so steep. There's places you might want to use all fours just to steady yourself. So it's not a great place to hike out in the dark.
There've been some rescues as a result.
I bet there have.
Yeah,
but that's a sweet little place.
It's an easy way to fall coming down.
Oh yeah. Well, coming down is always harder than going up.
Yeah. Especially the older we get, our knees get a little less forgiving.
I would say so. The stability goes too. I was telling you, you could, if you watch me fishing the river these days, you see me crawling on all fours along the riprap because I can't negotiate it like I used to hop from one rock to another.
Yeah. By the way, before I go beyond Sterling Pond, my recollection is it's the highest elevation trout pond in Vermont.
It is, and that's kind of was the impetus to start writing books on trout fishing, was this question that myself and my partner, we were both in graduate school at the time, we raised the question is, what is the last pond in Vermont to go out of ice?
And that would be it?
That would be it.
Sure.
And that's like slightly above 3,000 feet
right,
in elevation, and so that is the last one, but it took us about 8 months of research to answer that question. Wonderful research.
Yeah. Well, also, while we're staying in the kingdom, you mentioned Unknown Pond, South America Pond, West Mountain Pond, the Paul Stream, Madison Brook, and all. That's an area that I have really fond memories of. I was taken in there, like 1950 when I was 4 years old. I've been going there ever since. Ferdinand Bog, family members had a camp by Ferdinand Bog for years until it burned about 1981.
Yeah.
Actually, it was the office of the old logging camp.
Yeah, that's a beautiful area there. Talk about a lot of backwoods fishing in one small area.
Right.
There's a bunch of ponds in there that you have to walk to, and they're all sweet. West Mountain Pond, I would just comment, it's kind of shallower than the others, and it's hard to fish because it gets pretty weedy.
Right.
But if you get there early in the season before the weeds get in, that's a sweet pond.
Yeah. Excuse me. What I always thought special was when we had the camp there. Well, and then after that, one of my brothers owned. We built it. My father, my brothers, and I. But one brother owned it. The camp at the base of the falls on Madison Brook.
Oh, nice.
But anyways, like you say, you could stay at camp and you could fish multiple areas within a relatively short distance. Walk into ponds, fish at little streams. Great area.
Oh, it's fabulous up there. I started going up there in the probably the early to mid 70s. I started fishing up there, and it's one of my favorite places in Vermont. Probably my favorite. The southern Vermont and the area around Somerset and some of the high Green Mountains on the southern part of the state.
Right.
It's a nice high plateau there is wonderful too.
Yeah.
And those are the two probably least populated areas in Vermont.
Right.
And the good trout fishing always goes where there's fewer people. So.
Oh yes. Trophy Trout Waters. That's another one of your books.
Oh right, that was a focus because probably we're probably into maybe 15 years or close to 20 years into a program that the state of Vermont started. That is probably one of the most popular programs that they have ever done, and that is they started growing these different brookies, rainbows, brown trout.
Right.
Instead of stocking them at 1 year, they grow them 2 years.
Right.
And so there's a couple of dozen couple of dozen lakes and ponds that
they call trophy trout.
They call them
waters.
trophy trout, and
Right.
I know I read the stocking records. In some cases, they put rainbows in there that are 20 inches long.
Right.
And any kind of brookie that's anything like a foot long brookie or more, and these are 12 to 15 inches. They pop my eyes out. That's it. I don't put any trout up on the wall, but if I'd put a 12-inch brookie up there.
Oh yeah. No, Vermont's done a pretty good job with their stocking. They've had some problems with the hatcheries. Roxbury was shut down for quite a while.
Yeah, with the flood, got flooded right out.
The Federal Fish Hatchery in Bethel, of course, was built specifically to raise Atlantic salmon.
Right, that's a sad program.
Once that program went to pieces, they're now raising other fish.
Right.
But,
and the one in Salisbury, that's like on the hook to maybe go offline.
I'm going to say there was a proposal a year or two ago to close it, and then anglers got upset, and it got
Yeah,
maybe
they bought another year or two.
Yeah, a little probation or something.
I know they'll be back on the block, and it's be sad to see it go because it's an important factor in terms of raising fish in the state.
But from an economic standpoint, these little hatcheries are expensive.
They to meet regulations now.
Yeah,
what
the
they have
discharge.
To do.
Because the water from a hatchery is usually fairly polluted because of all the waste.
Right.
And New Hampshire's had that same problem right now. They've shut down 2 hatcheries.
Oh, really?
They're building a New Hampton is closed completely, I believe, and they're building a new one there, and then another one in that area has had to cut back production a lot to meet the EPA standards.
Well, I know it's a high price tag for them to redo Salisbury, but it would be very sad to see it go.
Well, at one time, Vermont had hatcheries all over. There were the buildings and the raceways are still up in Canaan, Vermont, in the northeast corner. They had probably a dozen hatcheries, small hatcheries scattered around the state. But I believe the hatchery in St. Johnsbury by Allright Springs, I believe that was the first federal fish hatchery.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there.
Right. You got a better handle on that than I do, Gary.
Yeah, I was out near Deadwood in the Dakotas, and there's a federal hatchery museum there, and they talk about the hatchery in St. Johnsbury. I can't remember all the details, but the hatchery that was at St. Johnsbury, where, by the way, Fish and Wildlife has their offices now.
Oh, right, yeah.
That has had a lot of significance for the federal hatchery program, where they put them in milk cans and load them on railroad trains and so forth. Yeah. So, little old Vermont.
Not the only time we've had a big influence.
Correct. Let's talk a little bit about some of your other books. How about Vermont Trout Streams? That you did several years ago with your friend Bob Shannon, who owns the fly shop in Stowe.
Bob is an angler, nonpareil, and really knows his flies. I've been making the same angling mistakes all my life, and have got more enthusiasm than skill. But Bob really kind of focused in on the fishing, the techniques, the flies to use, and so on. And I handled the geography in that. But we worked together. It took us a couple years to put it together, but I think it's a very useful resource.
Yeah.
It basically includes anything worth fishing, I would say. Any river or brook that's worthy of its name to go trout fishing is in that book.
Yeah, I found, well, to be honest, I found all your books valuable from the standpoint of helping someone not familiar with a particular area or a particular body of water. A lot of information, a lot of them have depths. With the maps, how to get there, all those sorts of things, what to expect. For someone who wants to explore new waters, these books are just a great time saver.
Oh, yeah. I think one of the interesting things in the newest one that I put out, the second edition of the new Atlas of Vermont Trout Ponds, that's an interesting thing that I included what they call is the lake scores. The state of Vermont has developed this lake score program that's a lot of citizen science where they go out and they've evaluated everything from the water clarity, whether there's invasives, what's the shoreline, if it's developed, undeveloped, and just apply a score to it. So it's very useful in terms of reading that to predict what kind of environment you're going to encounter when you go to some place like that. And if especially if there's invasives, you want to know, do I have to clean my gear and so on. That's helpful because some places it's posted, other places it's not.
Right.
And that changes often enough.
Definitely.
One thing I went on to point out to some of the older readers, or perhaps some people that are physically challenged, is that in the new Atlas of Vermont trout ponds, we've got 14 places there that are handicapped accessible.
Right.
And I really try to include that in some of the work that I do. I had some personal family issues with that, so it's on my radar. So it's so nice that there are 14 lakes and ponds in state. I hope there's some more. But they have casting platforms and they're wheelchair accessible. So if someone's out there,
so you don't have to give up fishing that you've loved all your life just because you end up either in a wheelchair or mobility restricted.
Right. Yeah. No, that's. I think it's a wonderful thing. Hopefully, and it's relatively new. This has all happened in the last 15 years or so.
Right.
And so I'm hoping there'll be more and more of that. But that's available for people out there that might. Gee, I don't know if I got any places I can fish anymore. And there's some good places to fish.
Point.
And they always have them in good places too. I'll tell you.
Right. No, I think all of that has to do with the ADA that is becoming more and more in the forefront of departments and agencies and municipalities, that we still need to be able to provide access for people who have a disability.
Right. It's I think it's for a variety of sports. You hear about it, more about it in other sports rather than our own sport of angling, but it's important there as well.
Have you got another book in the works?
At this point, no, I don't. I don't know what I'm going to do. I might have, I don't know if I've run out on the kinds of books that I'm going to write on trout fishing, but what I have to do is I have to maintain the book. So I've put 2 in second edition now that kind of after 6 or 7 years requires me to go back and revise it and keep them up to date. So that might be enough to keep me busy for a while. If you got any inspiration or suggestions, I'm open to them.
I have no inspiration these days. If I don't tell you where the big fish are, it's because I can't remember.
That's a good one.
Well, anyways, our time is up, Peter. I want to thank you for coming and talking with us. I know you're going to try the Wells River as soon as you leave here, heading back.
Yeah, I saw a sweet little spot there that I'm going to pull off and throw a fly around.
So I expect an email about what you did.
I'll send you that.
It's a secret.
Unless I forget.
Well, thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Gary.